to Referendums.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
Hey, Bryce. Fancy meeting you out here in the bush. Getting in some morning exercise?
Oh, well, you know me. Healthy body, healthy mind. Hey, have you seen my friend, Gang Gang, anywhere?
Gang Gang?
Yeah, Gang Gang the Cockatoo.
Oh, yes. I've seen heaps of them around. After all, we are in Canberra, Bryce, and they are the faunal emblem of the ACT.
The faunal what?
The faunal emblem. Every state and territory in Australia has an animal emblem.
Oh.
New South Wales has the platypus, Victoria has the leadbeater possum, and here in the ACT we have the Gang Gang cockatoo.
How about that? I didn't know that. Well, this particular cockatoo is hard to miss. He's kind of always flustered and a little bit out of sorts. There's usually something ruffling his feathers any given time. Oh, look, here he comes now. Gang Gang, over here.
So much fuss, so much bother.
Hey, Gang Gang, I'd like you to meet a friend of mine. This is Stephanie. She works at the Museum of Australian Democracy, a really cool museum located inside Old Parliament House. You know Old Parliament House, right? I'm pretty sure I've seen you in the gum trees outside it.
Hey, Gang Gang. It's so nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you. Though I've been keeping well away from Parliament House these past few months. Both the old one and the new one. So much fuss and bother up there. It's been ruffling my feathers.
You don't say.
Well, I just don't understand. I see politicians and marches and parades and protesters up there on Capitol Hill, people coming day and night back and forth, all talking incessantly about this referendum thingy.
Yes, the referendum.
It's got them all in a bother. And when they're in a bother, I'm in a bother. But I just don't understand what all the fuss is about.
Well, as luck would have it, Stephanie is something of an expert in referendums. In fact, among all of my friends, I've never met anyone who knows more about our system of government than Stephanie does. Would you like her to explain it?
Will it take long? I only ask as I've got to meet the other cockatoos over at Black Mountain. Word on the trees is that there's a pyracantha tree there with more deliciously plump berries on it than you can poke a feather at.
Nope, I promise, Gang Gang, it won't take long. Find yourself a comfy branch, my friend, and you'll be an instant expert in referendums faster than you can say, shake your tail feather. And just think about how impressed your friends at Black Mountain are going to be.
Ooh, this sounds fun. Okay, where do we start?
Well, the best place to start is with the Constitution.
The what?
The Constitution. It's like a rule book by which Australia is governed. You know, when you play a board game or a game that is in the park or in the playground and there are always a bunch of rules to follow?
Yes?
It's the same sort of concept, except the Constitution is like a rule book for how our country is run, which makes it a really, really important document. The government, which is made up of politicians that adults vote for in elections to send to Canberra to sit in Parliament House and run the country. It relies on the Constitution as the official rulebook.
So it's a book?
Well, yes. Technically, it's a document. And a really long one at that. But yes, you can get it in a book format. I'll get Bryce to stick a link in the podcast episode notes for you.
Consider it done.
So, who wrote this book then?
Oh, that's a great question. The Australian Constitution was drafted way back in the 1890s. Representatives from the 6 states came together to discuss what should be in the Constitution at these big events called constitutional conventions. The final draft of the Constitution was approved by a vote of the people who were eligible to take part in referendums.
And what's in this Constitution? What does it say?
Ah, yes. Let me explain. The Constitution outlines how we are governed. It talks about Australian Parliament and the government being responsible for national decision-making and lawmaking, as well as Parliament, including the King, represented by the Governor-General, the Senate and the House of Representatives. There is information about the High Court and what powers the 6 states have as well.
So, wait, back it up a bit. The rule book that we rely on to run the country was written all the way back in 1899?
Yep. But this is what is so cool about it. It took such a long time to write and had so many clever people contributing to it that it has stood the test of time and mostly remained relevant for over 120 years.
What do you mean by mostly?
Well, I mean that because Australia has changed a lot as a country from what it was 120 years ago when the Constitution was written, there have been some times in the past 120 years when the Constitution has needed to be updated so that it is better suited for the modern Australia that we know today.
Oh, okay. So in the same way that you have to update road rules from, say, when they were written for horses and carts to now, where we have electric vehicles on them, the Constitution needs a little bit of modernising every now and then.
Exactly, Bryce. The Australian people have the power to actively participate and make changes to the Constitution by voting. This happens after much discussion when people feel that an important change is needed.
Hasn't been changed all that much, eh? So how many times are we talking?
Well, remember, gang, how I told you that the Australian Constitution was drafted way back in the 1890s?
Yes.
And then enacted, which is a fancy way of saying that it became our official rulebook in 1901 when the states all federated, meaning that they joined together to be one country instead of separate colonies. Well, since then, the Constitution has been altered 8 times.
So wait, what? The words in the Constitution have only been changed 8 times in the last 122 years?
Yep. Of the 44 referendum questions put to the Australian people, 8 proposed changes have been approved by a vote of the people.
Okay, slow down there, Steph. There's that word again, referendum. What in the wide world of feathers is a referendum?
So the politicians in Canberra can't just make changes to the Constitution themselves. A proposed change must be approved by the federal parliament, and then the government needs to ask the Australian people a question with a yes or no answer. All Australian citizens over the age of 18 get to vote on the question, either choosing to agree with the proposed change and voting yes, or choosing to disagree with the proposed change and voting no. This is called a referendum. It's basically a vote, a chance for everyone in the country to vote yes or no to a proposed constitutional amendment.
So what you're saying is a referendum is needed to make a change to the Constitution.
Yep, that's right, Bryce.
Okay, so what kind of proposed changes have been made to the Constitution in the past?
Well, gang, some of the suggested amendments have included things like giving new powers to the Parliament, how referendums are conducted, and certain kinds of rights and freedoms.
All right, I'm going to need you to be more specific here, Steph.
Fair enough. Well, in 1946, there was a referendum on social security, which is to say the role the federal government would play in providing money to people who may find themselves out of work. And famously, in 1967, there was a referendum on whether to include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia's official population count. And the most recent changes to the Constitution were in May of 1977, when 3 of the 4 questions put to voters that day were successful.
And of course, that 1967 referendum is often referred to as an important step towards giving Indigenous Australians the same rights as non-Indigenous Australians.
Ah, I see. And tell me, Steph, when was the last referendum?
Golly gosh, gang. It's been a while. Let's see. The last referendum was all the way back in 1999, over 20 years ago.
Oh, and what was it all about?
The 1999 referendum was about whether to establish Australia as a republic.
As a what?
A republic. You know, there's a King of England, King Charles.
Yeah.
Well, King Charles is our head of state. But here in Australia, the Governor-General, who represents the King, is an important part of our parliamentary processes, signing bills into law. People wanted a referendum to consider whether we break those ties with Britain and become a republic, selecting our own head of state.
And did the Australian people vote yes in that referendum? Did it pass?
Well, lots of people voted yes, but not enough of them in enough states and territories for it to pass.
Okay, my head is hurting a bit. This is a lot for a bird brain to take in, Steph. I want to know more about what it takes for a referendum to succeed, but first I want to go and stuff my face with those pyracantha berries. Do you mind if we pick this up next episode?
Oh, gang, of course. Never let it be said I stood between a cockatoo and his berries. See you back here next episode and I'll explain what it takes to pass a referendum and why.
Oh, and gang, before you go, if you or any of the Squiz Kids listening are interested in learning more about the Constitution or past referendums, there are a heap of links in the episode notes. Plus, you can always visit the Museum of Australian Democracy website, which is a rich source of information on all of this stuff. There's a link to that also in the episode notes. Plus, make sure you check out the excellent classroom activity sheets we've created to go with this podcast and which help explain some of the big ideas in it. See you back here soon, gang.
I'll be back in 4 shakes of a tail feather. Or until there are no berries left on the tree, whichever comes first.
Hey, teachers and parents, when you've finished listening, don't forget to head over to Squiz Kids' website where we've created some fantastic classroom resources so that you and your kids can learn more about the Australian Constitution and referendums. We've even created a board game that takes you step by step through the process of running a referendum. Will your country vote yes, or will you be consigned to the long list of no votes? You'll find out when you play Referendum, the board game. Good luck.